Welcome back. Hope you all had a good, relaxing time, and I believe that you are ready for the second session on textile wet processing by Dr. Murgesh Babu. Let me introduce and welcome Dr. Murgesh Babu, M.Tech, PhD, IITD, EMBA from Bapuji Institute of Engineering and Technology, Davangere, India. Sir has PhD honors with thesis title Studies on Structure, Property Correlation in Some Varieties of Indian Silk from Indian Institute of Technology, New Delhi, India. Sir's field of specialization is focused on pre-treatment process of textiles, textile dyeing, painting, textile finishing, antimicrobial finishing, chemical processing of natural fibers, textile polymer science and engineering, silk technology, silk dyeing, printing, finishing, color and color measurement, silk based biomaterials, environmental chemistry, non woven technology, total quality management, HR management, technical textiles, natural fiber processing, natural fiber based textile composites, apparel marketing and merchandising. Sir has worked for many international assignments such as Oxford Biomaterials Limited, Newbury, UK, Institute of Textile and Clothing, Hong Kong Polytechnic University, University of Mora, Cameron. Sir research work mainly focused on developing biomaterials from natural silk, fibrine, and serine for possible applications in tissue engineering, development of fire retardant finishers using PBI and its blends, Textile Chemistry Division of DRDO Bangalore. Sir has published many research papers and book chapters in international journals and textbook on textile related subject. Sir has many awards and recognition for his credits, namely Best Guide Award from Karnataka State Council for Science and Technology, Bangalore, India. He has been recognized as technical referee for the following international journal, Textile Research Journal, USA, Journal of Applied Polymer Science, USA, Research Journal of Textiles and Apparel, Hong Kong, Smart Materials and Structure, USA, Journal of Industrial Ecology, Journal of Industrial Textiles, Journal of National Fibers. He is a member of Scientific Partners for the Master's Program in Central Africa. He is a life member, Indian Society for Technical Education, Associated Member, Institution of Engineers, India, and member, Textile Chemistry Test Formulation Committee, New Delhi. Sir, Nitte School of Fashion Technology and Interior Design, in association with Bangalore Central University, is honored to welcome you for third day, second session of 6-day virtual faculty development program with the topic Fashion Design and Approach Through Creative Teaching. Sir will be starting the session with the topic on textile wet processing. All the participants are requested to please follow the adequates of online session. Please mute your audio and video for smooth conduct of the webinar. Mic over to Sir.
Okay. Good morning to all of you. I hope you can listen to my voice clearly. And thank you very much, madam, for the nice introduction. And today, at the very outset, I would like to congratulate Dr. Sandhya, madam, and her team for organizing such a wonderful webinar on the latest developments in the fashion design and apparel processing. And I welcome all of you to my presentation on importance of wet processing in textile and apparel industry. My today's presentation will include the introduction and objectives of wet processing, chemicals and auxiliaries used in wet processing, gray fabric preparation processes. Then I will be switching over to the introduction to dyeing, then printing. In printing, I will include the styles and methods of printing. And at the end of my presentation, I will be giving an overview of the finishing treatments or the finishing methods and some important finishes that are used in the textile and apparel industry. Okay, next slide. I think all of you know this basic processes involved in the textile manufacturing. We all know fiber, then spinning for making yarn, and then weaving, knitting, non-woven fabric. Then fabric is taken for the final process of wet processing, wherein a value addition is done for the fabric to improve some of the important properties like the aesthetic properties, functional properties, performance properties, etc. And then finally, the finished fabric will go to the manufacture of garments and apparels and so on and so forth. So this is the basic sequence of the manufacturing activities in a textile industry. Next slide. So what is wet processing of textiles? You all know the basics of textile wet processing. It is also known as the chemical processing of textiles. It is an important division in the textile industry which refers to a series of operations involving treatment of fibers, yarns, and fabrics in wet form using water, chemicals, and solvents that you all know very well. Wet processing is an important step in textile production as it adds maximum value to the textiles by improving its aesthetics, comfort, and functional properties. Aesthetics could be the touch of the fabric, the feel of the fabric, the color of the fabric, and so many things are involved in aesthetics, and then comfort and functional properties, which are very much important for technical textiles or textiles that are used in the industrial applications. Okay, next slide. So what are the main objectives or the objects of wet processing of textiles? They include to remove the basic impurities present in the textile substrates. I will come back to that later. What are the impurities present in the textile substrates? To prepare the material for further processes such as dyeing, printing, and finishing, and to impart whiteness and luster to fabrics, and to apply various dyes on textile materials, which is popularly known as the dyeing process, and to apply print on textile fabrics using dyes and pigments to produce fancy effects and such as your design motifs on the fabric using printing. Then finally, to apply various types of finishes on textile substrates to enhance their sale value, or what you call as the market value of the fabric. So which is popularly called as the finishing process. Now let us look at some of the sequence of processes in textile wet processing. So before dyeing a fabric or yarn, some pre-treatment and after-treatments are needed. So the following is the flow chart here, which shows the various operations that are used in the wet processing department. It starts with the gray fabric inspection, because the gray fabric that is coming from the loom state has a lot of defects, will have a number of defects in it. So one has to inspect the gray fabric. Then it goes to the sewing and stitching department. Then actual processes of chemical processing starts with the singeing process, where the protruding fibers are removed by gassing treatment or burning of the fibers on the surface of the fabric. Then it goes to the desizing process, where the starch present in the size paste is basically removed. Then it goes to the scouring department, where the natural and added impurities, mainly the oil particles and then waxy substances, are removed during scouring. Then bleaching is the main process to improve the whiteness of the fabric by removing the coloring pigments present in the fabric. Then it goes to the mercerizing department, where mercerizing is basically not a proprietary process, although It is included in the preparatory department. It's basically a finishing treatment to improve the luster and the dyeability and the strength of the fabrics, yarns and fabrics. Then it goes to the main department of dyeing, where number of different types of dyes are applied, and then it goes to the printing department, where the prints are applied on fabrics. And finishing, number of finishes today, latest types of finishes have come in the market. They're all used to improve the performance of the textile materials. And then final inspection, then finally the fabric is delivered to the customer. So these are some of the important process. So what is singeing? Singeing is basically removing the protruding fibers present in the fibers, which are called as the hairs or hairy fibers, by burning the yarns and fabrics. Okay, so I will be giving you the details of the singeing process. Then desizing is basically done after singeing process, where it is not, please remember, desizing is not the removal of size paste. Most of you may be reading in the textbooks or maybe in the notes that desizing is the process of removal of size. It is not. Desizing is the process of removal of only the starch present in the size. Size contains starch and other materials. So please remember, desizing is only the process of removal of starch. So then is the scouring, where number of added impurities and natural impurities. Natural impurities is basically the wax, because in the inner wall of cotton you have about 0.1 to 0.5% of wax, which is very, very difficult to remove. So this wax coating or the wax present in the cotton has to be removed for making the yarns and fabrics more absorptive towards the water, towards solvents, towards dyes, etc. So scouring basically is the process of removal of the natural as well as the added impurities present in the fabric. So bleaching basically is improving the whiteness. You have a lot of natural coloring pigments present in the cotton material. So this natural coloring pigment has to be removed from the cotton to make it much more whiter. So we use a lot of bleaching agents, chlorine-based bleaching agents, and then non-chlorine-based bleaching agents to discard this white pigment present in the cotton material to make it more white and more lucrative to the fabric. So then is the mercerizing process, is the process of improving the luster and the dyeability of the cotton. As you all know, that cotton is basically devoid of luster because it's a natural fiber. Except the silk, most of the natural fibers are devoid of luster. So mercerizing is the basic process of treating the cotton with 18 to 25% caustic soda for about 2 minutes at room temperature. It's a simple process invented by John Mercer. So after mercerization, the fabric goes to the 3 major departments, such as the dyeing, printing, and finishing. So dyeing is the overall coloration process. So I have listed out some of the important classes of dyes that are used for dyeing the yarns and fabrics: direct dyes, reactive dyes, acid dyes, metal complex dyes, modern dyes, basic dyes, azoic dyes, vat dyes, sulfur dyes, and dispersed dyes. And coming to the printing process, it is basically a localized dyeing. It is not an overall coloration process. Here, please remember, both dyes and pigments are used. You can use dyes. Sometimes it is called as dye printing. And most of the today fabrics are printed with pigments, because pigments are highly insoluble in water. That is a basic difference between a dye and a pigment. Dyes may be soluble or may not be soluble in water, but pigments are highly insoluble. So we have different styles of printing. We have methods of printing. So there are basically 3 styles of printing: direct style, discharge style, resist style. And then the methods are hand block printing method, roller printing method, screen printing. Of course, in screen printing, we have hand screen printing, semi-automatic screen printing, flatbed screen printing, rotary screen printing, and then many other options are available in screen printing. So then next is the development in garment printing, that is transfer printing, where a design from the fabric, from the paper, is transferred onto the fabric by heat treatment and other methods. Then today is the latest technology, that is your digital printing, where it is like printing a paper. Just feed the fabric to the printing machine, And then there is no absolutely number of colors that we can use in digital printing. That is the latest development that has taken place in the printing technology. Now coming to the finishing, it's a sequence of processes to improve aesthetics and functionality of fabrics. Various chemicals are used for finishing, and of course the finishing methods could be calendaring, sanforizing, or the two basic mechanical type of finishing methods. Then when we come to the chemical finishing methods, we have anti-creasing method, waterproofing, flame proofing, heat setting for man-made fibers like polyester, then of course weighting of silk for silk, and then soil repellency, oil repellency, many. Today we have the latest something like shape memory finishers, and then number of new finishing methods are coming to the market. Now let me just give you a glimpse of the chemicals that are used in textile wet processing, because wet processing deals with a number of chemicals and auxiliaries. Without them, you can't treat the fiber, yarns, and fabrics. So what are these textile chemicals or auxiliaries? So they are those chemicals which are used in textile wet processing, preparatory processes, dyeing, printing, and finishing operations as main chemicals, and also they will act as supporting chemicals which will assist and enhance and strengthen and control each of the operations used along with the main chemicals. Okay, so I will be listing out some of the main chemicals and the auxiliary chemicals here. So you can see here, this is the classification of textile chemicals. You can see on the slide. Chemicals used in preparatory processes, chemicals used in dyeing processes, chemicals used in printing, chemicals used in finishing, and of course, there are some chemicals which are called as general purpose chemicals, which are required for almost all these processes. So the chemicals includes acids, alkalis, enzymes, bleaching agents, peroxide killers, stabilizers, optical whiteners, surfactants, polymers, etc. And the supporting chemicals are auxiliaries in dyeing or dyes, oxidizing and reducing agents, leveling agents, sequestering agents, dispersing agents, carriers, pH buffers, many other things. Chemicals used in printings are dyes and pigments. So they are slightly different from the dyeing here. We use the thickeners. Of course, we don't use thickeners in dyeing. We use binders. Binders are also not widely used in dyeing. Solvents, fixing agents, anti-foaming agents, lubricants, emulsion thickeners or emulsions, the discharging agents, and resisting agents like resist salt, etc. So these are some of the chemicals which are slightly different from the dyeing processes. The chemicals used in finishing are a number of chemicals are used: softeners, anti-creasing agents, anti-static agents, water repellents, flame retardants, anti-soiling agents, anti-statics, etc. So there are general purpose chemicals which may require in almost all these processes, including wet processing, preparatory, dyeing, printing, and finishing, like dilute acids and alkalis, salts, buffers, enzymes, soaps and detergents, catalysts, cross-linking agents, and defoaming agents. So put together, all these chemicals form the major chemicals and auxiliaries. So major chemicals used in pre-treatment processes and their main chemicals. For example, in desizing, hydrochloric acid and enzymes. Amylase enzymes are used for desizing, and auxiliaries used are pH buffers and catalysts. In scouring, we use caustic soda as the main scouring agent. Along with the caustic soda, we also use sodium carbonate or soda ash. And then auxiliaries used are pH buffers, surfactants, emulsifiers, soaps, and detergents. And in bleaching, we use sodium hypochlorite, sodium peroxide, and sodium chloride amongst these three chemicals. Hydrogen peroxide is the most widely, it is also known as the universal bleaching agent because it is safe to use on most of the textile materials, because your hypochlorites and chlorides are chlorine-based chemicals. So generally, people don't prefer if it is an export-oriented fabric or material. So auxiliaries used are peroxide killers, stabilizers, wetting agents, pH buffers, optical whiteners, etc. And souring is a neutralizing treatment where we use acids basically to neutralize the bases that are used on fabrics, and we use pH buffers as auxiliaries. And of course, in mercerization, NaOH is the main chemical. As you all know that we use about 18 to 25% of NaOH. And other chemical that is used in mercerization is the latest development, that is your liquid ammonia, for improving the dyeability luster of the fabrics. And of course, the auxiliaries used are wetting agents. Okay, major chemicals used in dyeing processes. For example, in direct dyeing, we use direct dyes. Auxiliaries or exhausting agents such as sodium chloride, that is a common salt, or the Glaber salt, sodium sulfate, soaps, etc. In acid and basic dyes of silk, on silk and wool and acrylic fibers, we use acid dyes and basic dyes. And the auxiliaries used are acids, surfactants, leveling agents, sodium sulfate, etc. And in wet dyeing of cotton, because wet dyes are highly insoluble in water, so you need to reduce them to make them solubilize in water. We use reducing agents such as sodium hydrosulfide, which is popularly called as hydrose in the dyeing industry. Then solubilizing agents such as sodium hydroxide, oxidizing agents, exhausting agents like sodium chloride, soaps, etc. Okay. So in sulfur dyeing, we use sulfur dyes, which basically have this sulfur group in them. And the auxiliaries used are exhausting agents like sodium chloride, reducing agent. Because in wet dyeing, we use sodium hydrosulfide, that is your Na2S2O4, that is sodium hydrosulfide or hydrose popularly called, is used as reducing agent. But here in sulfur dyeing, we use sodium sulfide, that is your Na2S, as the main reducing agent for reducing the sulfur dyes, which are insoluble in water. So reactive dyes are the main class of dyes today used for dyeing of cotton and other cellulosic fibers, including viscose rayon. And of course, some attempts have also already been made on silk, use of these reactive dyes, that is especially the bifunctional reactive dyes on silk. Although silk is basically dyed by acid dyes and basic dyes, but we also can definitely make use of these reactive. So exhausting agents are salt, then fixing agents like sodium carbonate, soaps, and sequestering agents are used. Sequestering agents are basically the agents which remove the metallic ions present in water. For example, your EDTA, that is ethylene diamine tetraacetic acid. So they are some of the sequestering agents that are used for dyeing. Azoic dyeing, as you all know that azoic dyes are instantaneous dyes. They are called as in-grain dyes. You know, they are developed instantaneously on the fabric. You don't require much time for developing the colors on fabrics, especially on cotton. So naphthol dyes, they're also called as naphthol dyes. So the auxiliaries used are sodium hydroxide, exhausting agents, then acids, sodium nitrate, and then alkali binding agents like aluminum sulfate, buffers like sodium acetate, soaps, etc. Okay. And in dispersed dyeing, as you all know that dispersed dyes are the only class of dyes for dyeing on man-made fibers. And for dyeing of polyester, nylon, acrylic, polypropylene, etc., dispersed dyes are used. Basically, dispersed dyes are highly insoluble in water. So you need to dye them in different forms, such as carrier dyeing, using high temperature, high pressure dyeing, or thermosol dyeing processes are generally used. The auxiliaries used are carriers, dispersing agents, acids, reducing agents, and alkali. And of course, there are other classes of dyes like chrome mordant dyes, which are generally used for dyeing silk and wool. They are also called as mordant dyes. And the auxiliaries used are acids, surfactants, leveling agents, and then sodium sulfate. And metal complex dyes, which have the metallic ions in them in the dye structure. If you see, there are metal ions, so they are called as metal complex dyes. And the auxiliaries used are acids, surfactants, leveling agents such as sodium sulfate. Okay. Now let us come to the major chemicals used in printing processes. For example, in printing of cotton, main chemicals used are dyes, direct dyes, reactive dyes, vat and azoic dyes, and of course pigments. Now you can do printing of any fabric using the pigment, because pigment is on the surface of the fabric, and pigment will not have any affinity for any fiber. Please note this point. The major difference between the dye and the pigment is dye has some sort of affinity towards the fibers, textile material, but pigments are totally not having any affinity for any textile substance. So the auxiliaries used are thickeners, binders, solvents, fixing agents, hygroscopic agents like urea, salts such as sodium chloride, reducing agents, soaps, etc. And in case of printing of silk and wool, we generally use acid, basic dyes, reactive dyes, and of course pigments, thickeners, binders, solvents, fixing agents, hygroscopic agents, salts such as sodium sulfate, and soaps. And then coming to the printing of synthetic fibers, basically we use dispersed dyes, and of course we can also use pigments. Auxiliaries used are again thickeners, binders, solvents, fixing agents, carriers, dispersing agents, and acids and reducing agents like alkali, sodium carbonate, etc. Please note that when we use pigments, binder is a must. Without the pigment, if you do printing on fabric using dyes, you may not require a binder. Binder is a must for pigment printing. Okay, so the major chemicals used in finishing. So of course, I've just listed some of the important finishes because there are a number of finishes today available in the market for finishing natural fiber fabrics and synthetic fiber fabrics. Anti-creasing of cotton, dimethyl dihydroxyethyl urea, that is DMDHU, a popular formaldehyde-based chemical. Then dimethyl ethylene urea, that is DMDU, citric acid, Glaxol, BTCA. Citric acid, Glaxol, and BTCA are the non-formaldehyde-based chemicals which are used in the industry today. A lot of research is going on those chemicals for improving the anti-creasing property of cotton. Auxiliaries used are pH buffers, catalysts, cross-linking agents, etc. Softening, we use softeners. We use both anionic, cationic, and non-ionic softeners. And the auxiliaries used are surfactants and soaps. And then for water repellent finishes or waterproof finishes, we use silicone chemicals, zirconium salts or soaps, and fluorocarbon-based chemicals. And of course, we also use wax emulsions for waterproofing finish. So chemicals, auxiliaries used are pH buffers, catalysts, cross-linking agents, acids, reducing agents, alkalis, etc. For flame retardancy proofing, we use phosphorus-based compounds. Then halogenated chemicals are popularly used as flame retardants. And then auxiliaries used are again pH buffers, catalysts, cross-linking agents, acids, reducing agents, etc. Okay. Okay, we also use certain important polymers we use in the textile wet processing, and most the polymers are limited. They are very limited for a particular finish, and some of them are silicons used as fabric softeners, water repellents, lubricants, defoamers, etc. Then fluorocarbon polymers, which are used for protective clothing on fabrics, and we also use aminoplast resins used for easy care finishes, durable press finishes, and imparting dimensional stability for both the natural as well as for synthetic fiber fabrics. So having that background of chemicals used and the importance of wet objectives of the wet preparatory processes, now we move on to the actual processes that are used in textile wet preparatory processes. That is your gray fabric inspection, singeing, desizing, scouring, bleaching, mercerization. I'm including mercerization in the textile preparatory process itself, although it is sometimes considered as a finishing treatment. All the raw materials, irrespective of the form in which they are available, are required to be prepared. That is very, very important if they are to be subjected to chemical processes such as dyeing, printing, and finishing. Raw textiles need to be prepared as the textile fibers they consist of contain matter that is regarded as impurity. A lot of impurities are present in these fibers, which are undesirable for most of the further processes. So natural fibers contain impurities of natural origin. On many occasions, the undesirable matter may include substances such as size added by man for specific purposes in during the process of sizing. Man-made fibers too contain added matters, especially chemicals that aid trouble-free processing during the manufacture of these synthetic fibers. So if therefore fibers are to be dyed, printed, or subjected to other wet finishing processes, their hydrophobic outer layer has to be removed and the fibers converted to a hydrophilic state, that is highly absorbent state in which they can be easily wetted. So chemical treatments that enable the textile chemists to make gray textile material absorbent are called preparatory processes and sometimes gray preparatory processes. In general, processes such as singeing, desizing, scouring, and bleaching come under this category. Sometimes the process of mercerization is also included as one of the preparatory processes, though the purpose and effects of this process are entirely different. Okay. So what is the need for preparation or pre-treatment of these fibers, yarns, and fabrics? The basic objective of treatment processing is removal of added and natural impurities present in fibers, fabrics to improve their absorbency. This prepares the textile substrate for downstream processes like dyeing, printing, finishing, etc. So improvement in absorbency, as all of you know, brings about the better comfort or improved comfort and improved methods for downstream processing, like dyeing, printing, and finishing. So a good preparatory process has several objectives: removal of loose, hairy, protruding fibers from the surface of the fabric to make it a smooth, clean surface; removal of natural impurities like oils, fats, waxes, greases, natural matter, lignin substances, especially in jute and other bast fibers. You know, they contain a lot of lignin substance. They have to be removed. And sizing material like starches and other ingredients of the size paste. To obtain an absorbent fabric, this is ready for dyeing and printing process. To obtain softer and proper white fabric depending on its application. Okay. Next. Now look at these pictures. You know, just a small pictures of the various preparatory processes that are used in the industry. Starting with gray fabric inspection, you can see the gray fabric inspecting machine. A person will stand in front of the machine to inspect the fabric for its defect. Then the singeing process. Mostly the gas singeing process today is widely used, although there are other new methods have come which are not so popular. Then comes the desizing process. You can see the desizing process range, where desizing chemicals in the form of acids or in the form of enzymes are used for removing the starch present in the cotton fabric. Then is the scouring process, where the natural and added impurities like wax and the sizing ingredients like oils and fats and lubricants are removed during the scouring process. Then is the bleaching, where the fabric becomes white, and next it goes to the mercerizing range. Of course, we have different types of mercerizing machines like chainless, padless mercerizing machine, chain mercerizing machines, etc. And we also have certain new developments in mercerizing like hot mercerizing, liquid ammonia treatment, etc. Then it goes to the dyeing department, where number of dyeing machines like the jigger dyeing machines, then winch dyeing machines, then hank dyeing machines are widely used for dyeing various types of yarns and fabrics. Then, of course, the fabric goes to the printing. We have a number of printing technologies today, starting from hand screen printing, block printing, then it goes to the rotary screen printing. Then we have the latest digital printing technique, of course. Then finally, you can see some finished fabrics finished with a number of finishing agents. Next slide. So gray fabric inspection. Gray fabric inspection is the process of identifying weaving faults, basically the weaving faults present in the fabric. So it is an important aspect followed prior to wet processing and garment manufacturing to avoid rejects due to fabric quality and facing with unexpected loss in manufacturing. So it is done for fault, defect rate, fabric construction, end-to-end or edge-to-edge shading, color or color hand or feel, length, width, print defects, and appearance. So these are some of the defects which are found especially during the fabric inspection process. Okay, next. Next slide, please. Okay, look at this gray fabric inspection machine, which is usually done on fabric inspection machines such as those shown here. These machines are designed so that fabric rolls can be mounted behind the inspection table under adequate light and re-rolled as they leave the table. The inspection machine is either power driven or the inspector pulls the fabric over the inspection table to find or to identify or detect the faults present in the fabric. So once the defects are tracked, marked and recorded on an inspection sheet. Okay, next machine. So singeing is the process of burning off or of the protruding fibers from the surface of the yarn or fabric in order to improve the luster and smoothness of the material. So it is called as the fuzz. Fuzz is the word we generally use for all those unwanted hairy fibers on the surface of the fabric or protruding fibers. They tend to scatter the light because you don't get the complete reflection of the light from the surface of the fabric if these protruding fibers are present. So they have to be removed, and if they are present, they contribute to a very dull appearance of the textile material such as fabric. So removal of these fuzz results in a very smooth and more uniform surface that reflects more light and therefore a brighter appearance. So singeing is also termed as gassing, especially gassing is the word used for the yarns. If you do singeing of yarns, it is generally called as gassing, the gassing of yarns, especially when yarn is subjected to this process. So what are the main objects of singeing? Burning off protruding fibers from the yarns and surface to produce a very smooth, even and clean surface, to develop maximum yarn and fabric luster, to create smart designs, clarity in printing, that is very, very important, to prevent uneven dyeing and printing. Very, very important thing is that singeing is very much required for printing, for producing clean registration of the prints, very clear prints on the surface of the fabric. So to enhance the fabric surface and make it suitable for subsequent processes. Okay, next. So there are a number of advantages. It will produce a very clean fabric, and it will attract less soil if it is properly singed. Then there is reduced risk of pilling, especially with synthetics and their blends. And singed fabrics, they allow printing of fine, intricate patterns. That is very, very important, with high clarity and details. The risk of skittery dyes, because if the short fibers are there, if the protruding fibers are there, you get that specky dyeing, what is called a skittery dye on the surface of the fabric. So it is very important to remove these short fibers to get even dyeing of the fabrics. Okay, next. Okay, this is the basic thing, as all of you may be knowing. There are three important dye singeing machines, like plate singeing machine, roller singeing machine, and gas singeing machine. Next slide. So this is the flow chart, the diagram which shows the plate singeing machine, wherein two copper plates are heated, red hot copper plates. The fabric passes over the plate, and then because of the contact between the plate, hot plate, and the fabric, the short fibers are removed. The fabric moves at a very high speed, and then finally it is quenched in water to eliminate the sparks that are coming along with the fabric. So this is basically a very traditional method of singeing, which is not being widely used in the industry today. Okay, next one. Next slide. So I have told you this is the basic structure of the plate singeing machine. It has two important hot plates, copper plates, and then finally, after singeing, the fabric is quenched in the water bath to remove the excess of sparks that are coming on from the fabric. Next slide. So this is the improvement over plate singeing, called as the roller singeing. This is also not being widely used today because of the uneven singeing. You have only one cylinder here, which is called as a hot cylinder, on which the fabric passes over, and the excess of the protruding fibers are removed from the surface of the fabric. And then finally, as you saw in the plate singeing machine, finally the fabric is passed through a water bath to remove the sparks coming out of the fabric surface. Next one. So roller singeing is similar to plate singeing. Instead of a hot plate, they are using a large cylinder is used, and it is much better compared to plate singeing as far as the temperature control and uniformity in singeing is concerned. But still, it has got its own disadvantages. That's the reason why roller singeing is not widely used today for most of the fabrics. Okay, next one. So this is the basic machine used for singeing of the cotton fabrics using gas singeing. So this is the popular singeing process. Even today, most of the mills, textile mills, are engaging this gas singeing machine. You will see a lot of burners, nearly about 3 to 4 burners are used, and they release the gas, and then they burn off protruding fibers. So the flames that are protruding, flames that are coming out of the jets will burn off the protruding fibers present in the surface of the fabric. So this gas singeing machine is a very popular machine used in the processing industries. Okay, next slide. Okay, next slide. You can see here, this is the gas singeing and desizing range. Sometimes we generally combine the singeing process with the desizing and scouring. You can see the two fabrics. Before singeing, you can see a lot of hairs and protruding fibers on the surface of the fabric. Then after singeing, you can see a very clean and smooth surface of the fabric without any hairs or without any protruding fibers. So it is much suitable for printing as well as for dyeing and other further processes. Even for mercerizing, the singeing will definitely help to improve the luster on the surface of the fabric. Okay, next slide. Okay, so these are some of the important singeing parameters. Anyway, I'm not going to discuss all of them because the time restriction here. So what are those? They are flame intensity, intensity of flame coming out of the gas, the nozzle. Then fabric speed, at what speed the fabric is moving in the machine. Then singeing position with respect to the fabric. Then distance between the flame burner and the fabric. And of course, the width of the flame that is coming out of the machine. So these are all some of the important parameters that can vary in the singeing process. So desizing is the process of, the next process is desizing process. It is basically a process, basic wet processing, which uses a lot of chemicals here. Okay, so desizing, next slide, is the removal of starch present in the size paste, known as the desizing process, which facilitates penetration of chemicals and dyes applied during drying. And then you can see the chemical formula of the starch, which contains a lot of hydroxyl groups and of course the carboxyl groups here also. So this is basically an insoluble material. Starch is basically an insoluble material which contains two branches. One is called as the two components. One is called as the amylase, which is a linear polymer with low molecular weight, and amylopectin, which is a high molecular weight compound, which is a branched polymer, which is both of them, both amylose and amylopectin are what you call as they are insoluble in water. Next slide. So what are the ingredients of the print paste? So size paste, or the starches, vegetable oils, mutton tallow, antiseptic and anti-mildew agents, deliquescent hydrophobic substances, anti-foaming agents, etc. Next slide. Okay, so what happens during desizing process? The starch is removed during desizing by what we call as the basically chemically starch is a polyalpha glucopyranose in which both the straight chain and branched chain polymers are present. So both these polymers, as I told you in the beginning, are insoluble in water. So this process is basically called as hydrolysis of starch. So hydrolysis is basically treatment with water and to some extent some basic acids like hydrochloric acid. So here the starch is divided into several components, and finally a highly soluble glucose is produced, and the insoluble starch is now finally converted into a soluble glucose, which can be easily removed during the process. Okay, next slide. So these are various desizing methods. Some of them are hydrolytic methods, oxidative methods, and then there are some novel methods such as your solvent processing, low temperature plasma treatments, desizing 2000 are some of the novel methods that are used for the desizing process. Okay. Out of all these, I think hydrolytic methods, including the enzymatic treatment, is the most widely used technique for desizing of cotton and other cellulosic materials. Next slide. You can see most of the desizing processes, including the enzymatic treatment and acid treatment and hydrolytic methods, can be done on a 2-bowl padding mangle or a 3-bowl padding mangle, which are widely used in the industry today. So these are the basic equipment or machines which are used for desizing purpose. Next. Okay, this is the acid desizing process. We generally use very dilute hydrochloric acid for removal of the starch material. About 0.5 to 1% of sulfuric acid or hydrochloric acid can be used. It is treated and then it is mounted on a beam, and then it is kept for storage for some time, for nearly about 6 hours to 8 hours. Then it is taken for the cleaning process, or where the fabric is washed in a clear water bath to remove the size or the starch present in the fabric. So this is the basic acid desizing process. Next. Okay, enzymatic desizing is the most popular method today, widely used because it is very safe compared to the acid desizing and other even hydrolytic, the oxidative desizing methods. So most of the enzymes are very specific to conditions like temperature and then pH and the time of treatment. So desizing enzymes may be classified on the basis of the source which they are obtained. Okay, next. So there are a number of enzymes, malt enzymes, then pancreatic enzymes, then bacterial enzymes, and enzymes which are used in the industrial scales, etc. A number of enzymes are used. But most of the widely used enzymes are called amylase enzymes that are used for removal of the starch. Okay, next slide. So these are some of the enzymes used in the textile wet processing in general. Amylase for desizing, catalase for acting on hydrogen peroxide to decompose, and proteases, lipases, pectinases, and lacases for indigo decomposing the indigo molecules for washed down effect on denims. Cellulases for removal of the protruding fibers to something like it is called as the bioscouring process or a biopolishing process. Cellulases, pectinases for pectins, especially during scouring process. Then proteases for animal fibers. If you want to degum the silk, you can use these proteases enzymes for degumming. The lipases for elimination of natural triglycerides in scouring and desizing in the desizing and scouring process. So these are some of the enzymes which are widely used in the textile wet process. Next slide, please. So this is the basic flow chart, or you can say the flow diagram for showing the enzymatic desizing process. First the fabric is treated in the enzymatic bath, then it is kept for some time. It is called as a dwell time. Then finally it is washed. During washing, most of the the enzymes or the starch that is present in the fabric is hydrolyzed, and then it comes out as a solubilized material. Okay, next slide. Okay, the next one is the oxidative desizing, where we use certain oxidative desizing chemicals, such as the oxidizing agents like hydrogen peroxide, H2O2, sodium bromide, which is again a very popular method of removing the starch. Then sodium potassium persulfate, sodium persulfate, and then sodium chloride, which is used for the synthetic fibers. Of course, there are certain peroxy monosulfuric acids like H2SO5. These are some of the oxidative type of desizing agents widely used for removing the starch from the surface of the fabric. Okay, next slide. So scouring is the main process, as I told you, to remove the natural and added impurities present in the cotton. And if you do it for silk, it is called as the degumming process. Generally, sometimes, some people, they also use it as scouring of silk, but it is not a very properly used word for silk. Silk is generally degummed. So the process is called the removal of the degumming of silk. Okay, next slide. Next slide, please. So the main objects of scouring are saponifying the fats and waxes, breaking down the proteins and pectins, then producing the complex formations, increasing the absorptive capacity of the fabric, and to reduce the seed husk present in the fabric, to extract byproducts of reactions. These are some of the major objects of the scouring process. Okay, next slide. So basically, there are three systems of scouring. One is called as the conventional system, where we use an alkali, and alkalis like sodium hydroxide and sodium carbonates, and some emulsifiers are used. Second one is the solvent-based system, which is basically a chlorine-based and hydrocarbon-based solvents are used. For example, carbon tetrachloride and perchloroethylene. Most of you may be aware of the fact that if you give your fabric to a dry cleaning person, he will dry clean the fabric. So what is that dry cleaning means? Generally, he uses a chlorine-based solvents such as perchloroethylene or trichloroethylene for cleaning the fabric, and that is called as a solvent-based scouring process. And finally, you have this enzyme-based method, where we use a lot of enzymes today, like proteases enzymes for removing the pectins and other unwanted substances in the fabric. Okay, next slide. So these are the chemicals used in the scouring process: caustic soda, surfactants, detergents, chelating agents, sodium silicate, soda ash, and then solvents, etc. Okay, next slide. So solvent based, we use perchloroethylene or carbon tetrachloride, and hydrocarbon based or benzene, white spirit. So these can also be used for removing the impurities present in the fabric. So they rely on solvating power to remove the wax by dissolving it. This system removes only hydrophobic impurities and not others. So it's a low temperature, low energy required process, and that's why it is very popular, especially for the synthetic fiber fabrics. Okay, next slide. So perchloroethylene, trichloroethylene are the two examples of solvents which are popularly used in the industry, especially by the what do you call as the dry cleaners, and these are the most popular solvents for cotton fibers also. Okay, next slide. So enzymatics covering, I think I will skip this slide because yes, most of you know that enzymes are biocatalysts, and then so okay, these are the enzymes which are very, very important for scouring process. Pectinases are used for removal of pectic substances from cotton. Lipases, they are used for the removal of natural fat substances from cotton. Proteases are the enzymes which are used to catalyze the hydrolysis of proteins such as your sericin that is present in the silk fiber. So pectinases, lipases, and proteases are important. So the next process is textile bleaching, maybe the last process in preparatory department. So as all of you know, there is a pigment called flavone pigment in case of cotton, and then the source of color could be the presence of flavone, soil and dirt acquired from the atmosphere, contact with plant pots and seeds, color acquired during mechanical processing such as the contact with grease, oil, etc. So these are the basic sources from which one can get the color into the cotton fabric. Okay, so the next slide. So the main object of bleaching is to destroy or remove this natural or acquired color and make it a white fabric. So in other words, bleaching is the process of removal of natural and added coloring matter from natural and synthetic fibers to produce a pure white fabric. So this may be necessary when the fabric has to be supplied in white color, or it needs to be dyed in very light color shades, or what we call as pastel shades, or it needs to be printed. Okay, so these are the basic requirements or necessary things before you go for bleaching. Now this slide is very important because you can classify the bleaching agents as oxidizing bleaching agents and reducing bleaching agents. So what are the oxidizing bleaching agents? Chlorine, hydrogen peroxide, sodium persulfate, hypochlorous acid, potassium permanganate, then perborates, number of perborates are there, sodium permanganate, potassium permanganate, etc. Then of course we also can use ozone. So these are some of the very important oxidizing type of bleaching agents, out of which hydrogen peroxide is being widely used for cotton because it is the safest bleaching agent. So these are, they use oxygen directly or indirectly for bleaching action. So when they decompose, they produce nascent oxygen, and then this nascent oxygen decomposes the coloring matter completely into the simpler compounds which can be washed away with water during washing, and they do not give any trouble at a later stage. So this is the basic chemistry behind the bleaching action of these oxidizing bleaching agents. Next slide. So these are the reducing type of bleaching agents. So there are a number. Sulfur dioxide is there, sodium sulfite is there, then sodium hydrosulfide, that is popularly called as sodium hydrosulfide, then sulfurous acid, sodium bisulfides, sulfoxylates, thiourea dioxide. These are some of the very important, reducing type of bleaching agents. So in most of the reducing bleaching agents, the nascent oxygen, hydrogen combines with the coloring matter in the fiber to produce a colorless compound which remains in the fabric. So this generally gets oxidized back to the original coloring matter upon exposure to the air. Hence the whiteness produced by bleaching agent is not very permanent, like in case of hydrogen oxidizing bleaching agents. So oxidizing bleaching agents are very common commonly used, more effective compared to the reducing type of bleaching agents. Although hydrosulfides, then sodium sulfides, and then some of these sulfoxylates can also be used for removing the color from the fabric. Next slide. Okay, mercerization. Mercerization, as you know, was invented by Dr. John Mercer in the year 19. He was born in 1971, and then he invented this process called mercerization. So the name came after his name, called as the mercerization process. Next slide. So mercerization is carried out for the following purpose: improving the luster. Main objective is to improve the luster. It gives us the silky look, and in tension mercerization, it gives more luster compared to the slack mercerization. Improving the tensile strength, improved dimensional stability, increasing uniformity of dyeing and improving color yield, then improving elasticity and stretch material in slack mercerization. So these are some of the very important objectives of mercerization. So you all know that mercerization is a process of impregnating or treating the textile material, especially cotton yarns and fabrics, with a concentrated solution of NaOH, about 18 to 25%, depending upon the requirement, for a period of 2 minutes, 1 to 2 minutes at room temperature. It's a very simple process, with or without tension. You can use tension as well as without tension. So some physical changes like improvement in strength, improvement in luster, change in cross section can be seen. Some chemical changes are formation from fiber cellulose 1 to cellulose 2, improvement in moisture regain, improvement in dye uptake, etc. Okay. Next slide. So you can see here in mercerization, we are going to remove the convolutions. So this is an unmercerized, you can see a lot of twists in the cotton fiber. So these twists are removed to make a cylindrical type of fiber, very smooth fiber, so that it can reflect the light more compared to an unmercerized cotton fiber. So the convolutions are present in the untreated cotton fiber removed during the after the mercerization process. Next slide. So you can see here there is improvement, a lot of improvement in the dyeability, because when you do mercerization, the volume, free volume present in the cotton material increases, and the diameter of the fiber increases. That leads to the absorption of more amount of dye. You can see this is an unmercerized fabric and a mercerized fabric. You can see a lot of difference in the dye uptake for the same class of dye, for the same dyeing process, etc. For the same quantity of dye used, you get more dye uptake for the fiber after mercerization. So that is one of the main objectives of the mercerization process. Okay, next slide. So you can do mercerization during using yarn. You can do yarn mercerization using a Hank mercerizing machine. Very simple process. 2 rollers are there. The hanks are wound on these rollers, and then they are applied with the tension. And you can see the tray wherein caustic soda solution is kept, and then the stretch is given to the rollers, and thereby the mercerization takes place. Next slide. So there are fabric mercerizing machines with tension, stentor types, chainless type, and chainless padless type. So these are all the basic machines used for the mercerization of the fabrics in their fabric form. Next slide. Okay, so this is the range schematic representation of the chain mercerizing machine, and you can see, you can read, go through all the conditions of mercerization, and the advantages and disadvantages of this machine are given you in the slide. Okay, next slide. So this is the enlarged view of the chain mercerizing machine, where chain is used. You can see the chains at the side, and it will pull the fabric, and thereby tension is applied on the fabric, and the mercerization process is being carried out. Okay, next slide. Okay, so the second one is the chainless mercerizing machine. It's practiced on a range where cloth is maintained in contact with rotating drums virtually throughout the entire process. You can see a lot of tension is applied on the fabric. Okay, next slide. So this is your chain mercerizing machine compared to the mercerizing machine. Some improvement you can expect. There are padding mangles and then expanders, and there is a recuperatory unit, and then freshwater treatment for the fabric, and you can see a lot of improvement in these mercerizing machines. Okay, next slide. So the third one is, this is your chainless mercerizing machine, where you don't find any chains there in the machine. So fabric is in contact with all the rollers continuously all the time during the process of mercerization. Okay, next slide. So the last one is the chainless padless or padless chainless mercerizing machine, and impregnation with caustic soda, washing range, and then recuperator range. It is similar to your chainless mercerizing machine, where again the fabric is in contact with the rollers all the time during the process of mercerization. Okay, next slide. So this is the improvement in mercerization. Normally we generally carry out mercerization process in at room temperature for about 1 to 2 minutes. But there are some drawbacks. At low temperatures, sodium hydroxide solution of mercerizing strength has high viscosity and surface tension. So when a fabric is mercerized, swelling of fibers at yarn surface due to mercerization causes compaction of yarn structure. So this may result in poor penetration of NaOH solution in the core of the yarn. So this may lead to poor penetration and non-uniform mercerization. So that is the reason why we go for hot mercerization. Okay, next slide. So what is hot mercerization? Hot mercerization is carried out at a temperature of 60 to 100 degrees centigrade. It's a two-stage process in which the first stage is treatment of cotton with hot hydroxide solution. And then second stage is the reduction in temperature of the treated fabric to bring about the mercerization process. So it is a process which decreases the viscosity of caustic soda, allowing it to diffuse well into the core of the fiber. So the basic advantage of mercerization is that it is very uniform, and there is a proper penetration of caustic soda even into the core of the fibers, which is generally not happening in the regular mercerization process. Okay, next slide. So these are some of the advantages. Has low viscosity, higher penetration power. Swelling of cotton fibers in NaOH solution is low, hence more uniform treatment. Faster process, then leading to higher productivity and compact unit. Period of contact between material and NaOH can be reduced by up to 50%. The fabric can be stretched to a greater degree as the fabric becomes more plastic, more uniform coloration, better dye uptake, and it can permit elimination of scouring process, because scouring is generally carried out at a temperature of more than about 90 degrees centigrade. So if you can properly manage the mercerization process, so you can combine the scouring as well as hot mercerization process. So mercerization is carried out at a temperature of around 75 to 85 degrees. You can stretch up to 80 degrees centigrade and then combine scouring and mercerization together, so you can easily eliminate the scouring process. Next slide. So this is a development in the mercerization process. Liquid ammonia is used. The use of ammonia in mercerization has been known since 1930s. So in 1974, preliminary application of liquid ammonia mercerization for treatment of heavyweight cotton fabrics such as denims. You see the difference here, especially liquid ammonia treatment is very good for heavyweight fabrics like denim fabrics or corduroy fabrics, which are difficult to properly mercerize using traditional caustic treatments. So the ammonia process was intended as a replacement for conventional mercerizing process, which is also popularly called for mercerizing the sewing threads, called as the prograde or the petrograde process. Okay, next slide. So this is the basic flow chart or the flow diagram for the treatment of cotton using mercerizing liquid ammonia mercerizing range. Treatment of cotton with liquid ammonia treatment, then recovery of liquid ammonia, then washing of treated fabric after the mercerization. So this is the basic step or basic process involved in the liquid ammonia treatment of heavyweight of cotton fabrics like denims. So what are the fabrics which are used for mercerizing with liquid ammonia? So they are sewing threads, denims, corduroys, cambric fabrics, furnishing fabrics, jute cloths, linen fabrics, cotton polyester blended fabrics, and cotton nylon blended fabrics. So these are some of the very important fabrics and yarns that can be mercerized with liquid ammonia. Next slide. Okay, so next part, I'm going to talk about, give the introduction of dyes, pigments, and then dyeing processes, printing process, and finishing process. I think in the next 20-25 minutes, I shall complete the dyeing process, printing process, and finishing process quickly. Okay, next slide. So what are dyes? As all of you know, they are aromatic, organic, high molecular compounds, and they impart color to the fabric or the textile materials they applied, to even to the leather, paper, plastic, or any substrate. That's why they are called as dyes, which are generally coloring substances. Okay, so why they are called as dyes? What is the difference between a dye and a simple other chemical? Okay, so if you want to call a chemical as a dye should have two important components. They are, number one, chromophores, which are called as the color bearing components or color bearing groups. Second one is the axochromes. Axochromes are basically color intensifying groups. So at least two of them, that is your chromophore and axochrome, must be present in the dye structure to call a chemical as a dye. So if, for example, if you take sodium hydroxide or sodium carbonate, they are not called as dyes because you are not having any what do you call as the chromophores or axochromes in the structure of those chemicals. Okay, next slide. So what are these chromophores? Chroma is equal to color, phore to bear. So chemical groups which cause absorption and give rise to color are called chromophores or chromogens. These are color bearing groups in a dye molecule. So they are group of functional atoms which absorb light energy in the visible range. So the chromophore portions of the molecule will have alternating double bonds or what are called as conjugated double bonds. You can see these are some of the examples of chromophores. For example, you have this azo group, and then you have this keto group, and then nitro group, and then there are number of chromophores, and these are some of the very important chromophores that are present in the dye structure. Okay, next slide. So what are axochromes? Axo means increase, chroma means color. Chrome or chroma means color. So axochrome is a Greek word arising from two word roots, axo meaning to increase and chrome meaning color. Axochrome is a group of atoms which will impart a particular color when attached to a chromophore, but when present alone will fail to produce that color. Okay. For example, your hydroxyl group is there, the nitro group is there, and then your amino group is there, sulfonyl group is there, carboxyl group is there, then bromine, chlorine. So these are some of the very important groups that are present in the structure of the dye. Okay, next slide. So what are the classification of dyes? So I think all of you know this slide. There are azo dyes, carbonyl dyes, cyanine dyes, triphenyl methane dyes, and then phthalocyanine dyes. And these are the chemical based on the chemical composition of the dyes. Okay, classification of dyes based on the chemical composition. But we are more concerned about the composition of the dyes based on the application. Okay, next slide. Yes, sir. I know the subject is too wide. I'm trying to give you an overview of all the processes present in the chemical processing department. I'll just take about another 15 minutes or 20 minutes time to wind up the everything that I have planned for today. So this is the classification chart, coloring matter starting from the dye stuff to pigments. You have synthetic dyes, water soluble dyes, insoluble dyes, pigments dyes, and then so many other coloring substances. So you can just look at the classification chart to understand more about what type of these coloring matters are present in the industry. Okay, next slide. Okay, so the selection of dyes depends on suitability of dye, fiber content, required color hotness, penetration and absorption of dyes, cost of the dye stuff, methods of application, etc. Next slide. Okay, so dyes for cellulose. I think all of you know this. There are direct dyes, reactive dyes, vat dyes, azoic dyes, and sulfur dyes. So these are the important classes of dyes for dyeing of cellulosic fibers. Direct dyes and reactive dyes are soluble in water, whereas vat dyes, azoic dyes, and sulfur dyes are not soluble in water. Next. So next slide. So direct dyes, very simple to apply, easy to apply. You have a lot of color ranges, and so the main application mainly used for cellulosic fibers can also be used on rayon, silk, and wool fibers. Okay, next. Next slide, please. So this is the basic properties. These are the properties of direct dyes. Next slide. Next slide, please.
So here little internet issue is there. 2 minutes.
Okay. 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 The color range, you can see yellow color, pink colors, brown, turquoise, orange, red, violet, black, fuchsia, gray, green, forest green, scarlets, blues, wines, and china blue colors. All these colors are available in the direct dyes. Okay, next slide. So reactive dyes, the most widely used colors are reactive dyes. So they are easy to apply, moderate price, complete color range is available. And of course, they have very good fastness. Direct dyes may not be having very good wet fastness or the wash fastness, but reactive dyes are having very good fastness properties on cotton, commonly used on cellulosic fibers. And some of them are also used on wool fibers, silk fibers, and rayon fibers, and widely used in printing, especially because of their very good fastness properties. Okay, next slide. Okay, so the reactive dyes are mostly used on using a jigger dyeing machine, popularly used in the industry for dyeing cotton fabrics and other cellulosic fiber fabrics. So jigger dyeing is a very popular machine for dyeing, although there are other dyeing machines which can be used for, especially for knitted fabrics. We go for the winch dyeing machines for knitted fabric materials. Okay, next slide. So vat dyes. So these are called vat dyes because the earlier the wooden vat was used for dyeing these fibers, dyeing these dyes on textile materials. They are the most expensive class of dyes, and they also have very good fastness properties compared to other classes of dyes. And the color range is very limited, so only pale colors and then pastel colors are available, and that's the reason why they are not widely used on apparel such as your shirts or dress materials, etc. So they are restricted for some type of garments. Okay, next. So this is the basic properties of vat dyes. They are difficult to apply. They require reduction before they are applied on the fabric. They are most expensive. Incomplete color range, strong in blue and green but weak in brilliant red colors are not available. Very good all-round fastness properties, and then they are mostly applied on cotton goods, especially in dyeing denim fabrics suitable for dyeing of military garments, then sewing threads, protective clothing, etc. So they are most suitable for such type of fabrics. Okay, next slide. Okay, so vat dyes are commonly used for superior quality shirting materials, high quality shirting materials, military uniforms, furnishings, curtain fabrics, toweling fabrics, denim fabrics. Okay, so these are the application conditions. You have the IN method, IW method, and IK method. I think you can go through the slide for knowing more about the processes and then conditions used for dyeing. Okay, I'll skip this slide. Next slide. Azoic colors or naphthol colors, because they have this azo groups, N double bond N group. That's why they are called as azoic dyes, and they are not ready-made dyes. So you have to prepare them instantaneously during the process of dyeing. So they have two components called as the coupling component, that is naphthol, and then diazo component or the base. So you'll have to combine both naphthol and base using standard conditions, and then color is instantaneously developed on the surface of the fabric. That's why They are called as in-grain dyes or instantaneous dyes or in situ dyes. Okay, the color is formed from this colorless compound. Okay, so properties of dyes. Next slide, please. Okay, so these are the properties. They are little complicated in applying because you'll have to properly reduce them. Sorry, you'll have to properly dissolve the naphthol and then dissolve the base, and then bright shades at moderate cost. Generally, good fastness properties. Naphthol dyes due to naphthol ice color. They're called as ice colors because you need ice because you have to apply them at a very low temperature. You have to prepare the base at a temperature of around 8 to 10 degrees centigrade, so you require ice for that. So they're also called as ice colors, mainly applied on cellulosic fibers, especially on brilliant red shades. Okay, next slide. Sulfur dyes are also insoluble type of dyes, especially for dark colors, especially for blacks, blues, magentas. So you can use the sulfur dyes for cellulosic fibers like cotton, etc. They contain sulfur in them, and that's the reason why they are called as sulfur dyes. So they are almost similar to your wax dyes. Only difference is we are using sodium sulfide Na2S as the reducing agent when compared to hydrosulfide that is widely used in wax dyes. Okay, next slide, please. So these are the properties of sulfur dyes. Difficult to apply. Then their fast rubbing fastness and wash fastness properties. Poor fastness property, but rubbing is good. Rubbing fastness and sensitive to chrome. Many cause tendering of cellulose upon storage, and they are mostly used for heavy cellulosic goods in dark shades like black colors, blue colors, magenta colors, etc. Okay, next slide. Okay, so what are the dyes used for protein fibers? So application of dyes for protein fibers like silk and wool. Okay, so three main colors: acid colors, basic colors, and metal complex dyes are the three important class of dyes used for protein fibers. So what are acid dyes? So they require an acid for their application. That's the reason why they are called as acid dyes. So the acid is required to dissociate the dye into acid anions, and these are the acid anions or the anions which are responsible for the dyeing. That's the reason why they are called as acid dyes. So commonly used acids are sulfuric acid, hydrochloric acid, acetic acid, etc. Okay, next. So the properties are easy application, easily soluble in water, complete color range with very good bright shades. Fastness properties may vary among the individual dyes. So the main applications are commonly used for wool, silk, and nylon fibers. Next slide. So these are some of the structures of the dyes like acid blue, acid yellow, and acid red, etc. Okay, next slide. Okay, these are characteristics of various types of acid dyes. For example, leveling type of dyes, milling type of dyes, super milling type of dyes. I think I'll skip this slide because you can go through this slide and note down the conditions for dyeing of these dyes on various fibers. Okay, next slide. So metal complex dyes, they have a metallic ion in their structure, and they're also very popularly used on synthetic, silk fibers or wool fibers. So they are a part of your acid dyes also. So they have very good fastness properties compared to the acid dyes. So they're also being widely used in the industry today. Okay, next slide. So basic dyes are also called as cationic dyes because they contain a cation, and very popular dyes are available here. Mave was the first synthetic dye which was invented by Mr. William Henry Perkin in the year 1956. It was a basic dye. Okay. Today, even that basic dye is widely used in the industry today. So high tinctorial strength, very bright colors. Basic dyes are known for their brightness, bright colors compared to acid dyes, and good fastness on acrylic fibers. Acrylic fibers are also being widely dyed by basic dyes, along with the synthetic dyes like dispersed dyes. So acrylic fibers can also be dyed by basic dyes. Next slide. Okay, so these are the structures of very popular dyes like rhodamine, Bismarck brown, malachite green, methylene blue. These are the very popular basic dyes. Next slide. Then we have what is called as the, next slide please, magenta, that is your magenta color, and then acridine orange. These are some of the very popular colors that are available in the basic dye category. Okay, next slide. Okay, what are the dyes for synthetic fibers like polyester, polypropylene, nylon, acrylic? Next slide. As you all know, polyester is dyed by dispersed dyes. Polypropylene, Kevlar, Nomex, and other high-tech fibers, dispersed dyes. Nylon can be dyed both by dispersed dyes and acid dyes. Acrylic fibers, again, can both be dyed by dispersed as well as basic dyes. Okay, next. Dispersed dyes are highly insoluble dyes in water, so they require very skill in application, and then you require certain special dyeing processes like carrier dyeing or high temperature, high pressure dyeing for dyeing these dispersed dyes on polyester and other synthetic fibers. Okay, they also have very good fastness properties, and they have this sublimation property. Okay, next slide. So this slide is important because dyeing of polyester involves several methods. Okay, you can dye polyester using carrier method, using the regular jigger and winch. Carrier dyeing is carried out at 100 degrees centigrade, so you don't require very high sophisticated instruments or machines. HTHP, high temperature, high pressure method, which require a temperature of around 130 to 135 degrees centigrade. Thermazole method requires a temperature of around 200 to 210 degrees centigrade. So in HTHP method, you can go for either open bath dyeing using beam dyeing or pressure diggers, or you can go for rope dyeing using HT winch dyeing machines or jet dyeing machines or overflow dyeing machines. So these are some of the very important methods of dyeing. You can say this is the jigger dyeing machine. As I told you, using the carrier, you can use our regular jigger dyeing machine in open width form. Okay, next slide. Next slide, please. And then this is the rope form, which is called as the jet dyeing machine, which is very popularly used in the industry for high temperature, high pressure dyeing of polyester. So there are different versions of jet dyeing machines, a horizontal jet dyeing machine or a vertical jet dyeing machine. No, number of jet dyeing machines are there. So here the fabric also moves and the liquor also circulates in the machine for very high efficiency of the dye uptake. Okay, so jet dyeing machines are very popular for dyeing on polyester. Next slide. Okay, so there are different types of HTHP dyeing machines: high pressure jigger, high pressure winch, package dyeing machines, beam dyeing machines, and jet dyeing machines. Next slide. So this is your HTHP jigger dyeing machine, completely enclosed, completely closed. The dyeing is carried out in a very closed environment so that you can reach that particular temperature of 130 to 135 degrees centigrade. Next slide. So this is the flow diagram of a jigger machine. Next slide. Okay, so this is high pressure winch dyeing machine, especially for knitted fabrics. You can go for this winch dyeing machine because knitted fabrics, because of their low dimensional stability, they have to be treated little in a very delicate way. So we go for winch dyeing process. Okay, next slide. So this is your HTHP beam. The entire beam, which contains the yarns or fabrics, can be just inserted in the beam, and then the dyeing can be carried out inside the machine using the high temperature and high pressure. Okay, next slide. So this is the section of a beam dyeing machine. You can see the perforated beam on which the yarns and fabrics are wound, and then the liquor circulates through the beam or the perforations inside the beam on the beam, and the circulation of the dye liquor takes place in a very systematic way. Okay, next slide. So this is the process that is called inside out and outside inside. That means you have the perforations here, the liquor is passed through, and then it goes from inside to outside, and again from outside to inside the beam, and thereby all the layers of the fabric are uniformly dyed in this HTHP beam dyeing machine. Next process. Okay, so this is the package dyeing machine. Your cones and cheeses can be kept inside this package dyeing machine for complete dyeing process. So packages directly can be dyed using this package dyeing machine. Okay, next slide. Okay, there are different types of jet dyeing machine. As I told you, you have horizontal jet dyeing machine, you have a vertical type of jet dyeing machine. So all these jet dyeing machines are widely used in the industry. Next slide. Okay, so the third process is called thermosol dyeing process, where it's a continuous process. Temperature required is around 200 and 230 degrees centigrade, and then we use the dispersed dye, and then we dry the fabric, and then the fabric is exposed to a high temperature of around 200 to 230 degrees centigrade. So the dye gets sublimed from the dye, on the surface of the fabric, and then gets diffused into the fabric, and thereby the dyeing process is completed. Okay, next slide. So this is a third process of dyeing polyester at a high temperature. You can see here dyeing is passed through the dye bath, and then it is dried, and then there is a thermosol unit which requires a temperature of around 200 to 230 degrees centigrade for the complete fixation of the dye. Next slide. Okay, so I think I'll just run through the slides. You can go through very quickly, printing and finishing. I have another 5 minutes time, 5 to 10 minutes time. I'll just complete the process. Printing is another wet processing technology, as all of you know. Okay, next slide. So this is the block printing and screen printing processes. Next slide. Then you have this engraved roller printing process. Then you have the automatic flash printing, digital printing. Okay, next slide. Digital printing. This is the latest one, digital printing. And then these are some of the differences, as all of you know, between dyeing and printing. And you can just go through these slides. You can find out the differences. And these are the dye powders. And this is the pigment used in printing. Okay, next slide. So these are the styles of printing. You have direct style, discharge style, resist style, and special styles. And then very important are the discharge styles and resist styles, which are widely used in the silk industry today. The discharge style, we use a lot of discharging agents for discharging the ground color, so that beautiful designs can be produced on the surface of the fabric. And these are some of the special styles. So this is the direct style. Just like that, you go for direct printing on the surface of the fabric. Next slide. Okay, direct style, just use your screen printing or block printing or any other printing, directly print on the surface of the fabric. This is called direct style. Next slide. So these are some of the pictures of direct style printed fabrics. Next slide. So this is the discharge style, where we use a discharging agent. First we dye the fabric, then we prepare the discharge printing paste, wherein a discharge printing agent is included. Then we apply the print, then we go for curing. During the curing process, the discharging agent will destroy the ground color, leaving a design on the pattern, on the surface of the fabric. So you can have both white discharge and you can have even the color discharge patterns. Next slide. So important discharging agents: formaldehyde sulfoxylates, thiourea dioxide, sodium hydrosulfide, and then finally stannous chloride oxide. These are some of the very important. Rhongolite C is a very popular discharging agent used in the cotton industry. Zinc oxide is used, a popular discharging agent in the silk industry. Okay, next slide. Okay, resist style of printing. You can have both mechanical resist style of printing and chemical resist style of printing. As you all know, the batik style. Next slide, please. Batik style or tie and dye process. You can see here, this is the batik style, where we apply wax on the fabric, and then after the wax is applied, it is dried, and then it is taken for dyeing process. So you can see here, these are some of the tie and dye printed fabric pieces, where beautiful effects can be produced on the surface of the fabric using tie and dye technique. Next slide. So these are the methods of printing. You have wooden block printing, engraved roller printing, screen printing, transfer printing, and inkjet printing. So in screen printing, we have manual screen printing, automatic screen printing, fully automatic screen printing, like automatic flat screen printing and automatic rotary screen printing. So these are the various classification of methods of printing. Next slide. Okay, this is the hand block printing. As all of you know, I don't want to discuss much on this, as all of you know that. This is the process of hand block printing. Next slide. Then engraved roller printing, which is an improvement over hand block printing. Next slide. You can see the picture. These are the 4 color engraved roller printing, and today it is not being widely used in the industry. Next slide. And hand screen printing is a very common method of screen printing, then generally used for printing almost all the types of fabrics with beautiful designs. Automatic flat screen printing, which is completely automatic in nature, but this is not a continuous one compared to rotary screen printing. Automatic flat screen still, you have flat screens, they have to be lifted up and then lowered at the time of printing. So it's not a fully continuous process. Next slide. So this is your automatic flat screen printing, where flat screens are used. They still require a lot of space for screen printing. Okay, next slide. So this is the process of automatic flat screen printing. Next slide. And then fully automatic rotary screen printing, which is widely used in the industry today because it is completely continuous in nature compared to your automatic flat screen printing. So this is the picture which shows the rotary screen printing, where a lot of rotary screens, cylindrical screens are used, and then the process is completely continuous. The fabric never stops at the time of printing. It just moves, the rollers will be rotating, and then printing will be going on continuously compared to flat screen printing. Next. So this is the flats, the rotary screen printing, and you can see the squeegee is inside the rotary compared to your flat screen printing, where squeegee is outside the screen, whereas the squeegee you can see inside the screen. Okay, next. So transfer printing, which is used for printing on garments today. We first print the design on the fabric, paper, special paper, and then it is transferred onto the fabric. Next. These are the various methods of transfer printing: sublimation transfer printing, lead transfer printing, and then finally digital inkjet printing, which is widely used in the industry today, which is completely automatic. And the main advantage is that there is no limitation on the number of colors. You can see some of the pictures of the digital inkjet printing machines. So finishing, I'll just skip some of the important slides. Just go through some of the important slides and skip others. Finishing, as all of you know, improve the appearance. Okay, objects of finishing. Next slide. Improve the appearance, improve the feel, and then cover up the faults, improve the wearing qualities, set the garment shape, strengthen the fabric by coating, and there are a number of objects of finishing one can see through. So these are chemical finishing treatments, classification of various finishing treatments, reactive type of finishes, temporary, permanent. Number of examples can be given for various types of finishing treatments. So according to the quality, according to the function, also you can divide the finishing processes. Next slide. Okay, mechanical finishing or calendering finishing, sanforizing, softening, soothing, compacting, decatizing, tamponing, etc. Calendering is a very popular finish to improve the softness or improve the luster on the surface of the fabric, shining on the surface of the fabric, and there are a number of types of calendering machines. Okay, next slide. 7-ball friction calendering, which is widely used in the industry. Next slide. Then Schreiner calendar, which gives a very special effect on the surface of the fabric because fine lines are cut. Embossing effect can be produced on the surface by embossing the calendar. You can produce different embossing effects. You can see different types of embossing effects on the surface of the fabric. Next slide. Then sanforization, which is a shrinkage process, pre-shrinking process, where the fabric is pre-shrink at the manufacturing stage itself before it comes to the market, so that the fabric will not shrink at the later stage. That is called sanforization process. Next stage. So this is the sanforizing principle. I think most of you know that. I don't want to discuss that. Next slide. So this is the entire sanforizing process that is used in the industry today using sanforizing cylinders. And then we have flame retardant finishes. Number of flame retardant chemicals are being used today to improve the flame retardancy of the fabrics. Okay, next slide. So flame proof versus flame retardant. You can see the difference. Flame proof fabric, they are made that are inherently non-flammable, whereas flame retardant finishes are chemically treated to be slow burning and self-extinguishing when exposed to an open flame. Next slide. So these are commonly used flame retardant chemicals widely used in the industry. You can go through the slide and then note down some of the important chemicals. Anti-crease and wrinkle finishes or crease-resistant finishes are being widely used in the industry for cotton and silk and other materials. Okay, next slide. So they are also popularly called as wash and wear, anti-crease, crease-resistant, durable, wrinkle-free finishes. Next slide. And these are the chemicals: dimethylallurea, trimethylalmenaminurea, then DMDHU, etc. Number of chemicals are used as crease-resistant finishes. So there are a number of catalysts also used in the resin finishing, like magnesium chloride, disodium hydrogen phosphate, disodium dihydrogen phosphate, etc. Catalyst is important in anti-crease finishing. So these are formaldehyde-free finishing chemicals widely used for the crease-resisting finishing treatments. Okay, next slide. So water repellent and waterproof finishes. So they are also very popular in the industry. So examples are all weather coats, umbrellas, they are all water repellent finishes. Raincoats, diver suits, outdoor sportswears and outdoor finishes, etc. Chemicals used for anti water repellent finishes are paraffin wax, resins, aluminum salts, stearic acid melamine, silicones, and fluorocarbons. Next slide. So waterproof fabrics are coated, laminated, or bonded with a layer which is completely impermeable to water as well as air. Examples are tarpaulins, rubberized fabrics, inflatable boats, cover for outdoor furniture, rainbows, etc. Chemicals used are rubber, vulcanized rubber, oxidized oils, then polyvinyl chloroacetates, polyvinylene chloride, cellulose acetate, cuprimonium hydroxide solution, etc. These are some of the chemicals used for waterproof fabric. So this is the basic difference between waterproof and water repellent. Basic difference is water repellent will not allow water as well as it will allow air, but waterproof will not allow both water and air. And that is the reason why they are called as 100% waterproof and water repellent fabrics. So with this, I think I have made my presentation using the available resources. And since, as you know, the time is very limited to cover all these topics, each one of them, I think we can discuss at length whenever we meet again. Thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thank you, sir. All your questions will be answered through the mail due to the time constraint.
Yeah, sure. Thank you.
All the participants, please note the third session by Dr. C.V. Kaushik on the topic outcome-based education will start at sharp 12 p.m. You all are required to join the meeting at least 5 minutes prior to the commencement of the session. Thank you. See you all in the
Sorry, the time is at 2 o'clock. Murgesh Babu sir, excellent presentation. Thank you
madam.
very much. I understand very little time has been given. I think we will plan up for a bigger session into segments, like, we will have the basic finishes, and we'll have, specialized finishes and things like
Yeah.
that. Probably I'll plan it up sometime in the month of September or October, sir.
Sure,
Okay?
sure.
Yeah, thank you so much, sir.
Thank you.
Very, very nice. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all. Thank you all.
so much, sir,
Thank you.
for sharing your knowledge with all
Thank
the
you, ma'am.
participants. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you.
Feedback's link will be shared
Okay.
in the chat box.
Okay. Thank you.
The link will be active only for 10 to 15 minutes.
It is shared where? It is shared in my mail or what?
No, sir, it's in the chat box, sir.
Okay.
Dear participants, feedback form is shared in your chat box. Please fill your feedback form and please join us for the third session starting at 2 o'clock. And you all, thank you. So there is one question from the participants. Will you answer, sir?
Okay, yeah, sure.
What are the methods of teaching these practical methods in online classes will be an effective as classroom the learning?
Sorry,
What
repeat
are
the
the
question again.
methods of teaching these practical methods in online classes? Will it be
Practical.
effective as classroom the learning?
I think you'll have to prepare, you can prepare a nice PPT presentation, as well as you can show some videos. You can prepare videos of, the practical classes and, show the videos. That is the only way.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Yeah, thank you. Any other questions, please?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Hi, sir. What are the dyes suitable for eco-friendly fibers and medical textiles based on its properties?
Yeah. There are natural dyes. Today, a number of natural dyes have been, available. They are available in the market. So you can select some of those natural dyes, and then you do some trial and error experiments, because natural dyes, most of the natural dyes, they use a natural type of mordants. Without the mordant, you can't dye the dye, a natural dye. So suitability of the mordant, you have to find out, and then collect some natural dyes and collect some mordants, and then do some trial experiments on these eco-friendly fibers. What do you mean by eco-friendly fibers? Natural fibers, biodegradable fibers, or eco-friendly fibers, right? So
Yes.
go for natural fiber, natural dyes, instead of going for synthetic dyes.
Okay, sir. So one more question. Now,
Yes.
dyes application is now good result we can expect on fabric.
Yeah, definitely. Naphtha dyes are very good, because the time taken is less, and also you can get excellent permanent color. It is actually after the dyeing is over, what you get is not the dye. Generally, it is a pigment which is completely insoluble in water. So definitely you have excellent fastness properties like wash fastness and other fastness properties.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Now we have got this many questions. If any questions, we'll mail to you, sir. Thank you,
Okay.
sir. It was
Thank
indeed
you.
an excellent and interesting session. Thank you
Thank
for
you.
accepting our invitations. Thank you,
Thank
sir.
you. Thank you.